It's Monday morning and I am going to start a brand new painting. I've got my canvas, it's a big one. Let's go. I'm using a linen canvas for this painting, and I've never used a linen canvas before, so just to be on the safe side, I decided to put a few extra layers of gesso onto the surface before I started painting. And that'd be a much easier process if there wasn't a thief that lived in our house. Amber, have you taken my water spray again? Found it. Now my canvas is completely prepped and dry, I can start with the sketch. One of the ways that I'm trying to improve my artwork is by planning the painting a little bit better, and the way that I'm doing that, or one of the ways that I'm doing that, is by doing a more refined graphite underdrawing before I start painting. I think I might need a new pencil. The sketch is done and I'm just waiting for the fixative to dry before I can start painting it. I'm not sure whether I am going to be doing this in oils or acrylics yet, so I'm just going to start with some acrylic paint and see what happens. I'm starting with the most distant part of the painting, which is the sky. I'm going to try and create this really bright and colourful Aurora Borealis, or the Northern Lights. A few months ago, they were actually visible here in the UK. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see them, but I saw loads of photographs on Facebook afterwards, which is totally the same thing. The vast majority of the Aurora was just built up with thin washes of paint. Pinks and greens and blues just laid on top of each other, and then blended out with a filbert brush. Pretty simple process, but it is time consuming because you do have to use pretty thin layers of paint, and a heck of a lot of them. In the areas where I wanted those lights to be a bit brighter, I used less water and also added some white to make the paint more opaque. So we've got a bit of the background in, but there's still some more that I need to do with this, and I've got some very special paints that I want to try out. I wanted the painting to be interactive. I wanted it to feel like the lights were moving, like they were glistening, and the way that I did that was using iridescent paints. You can only see those paints in certain lights. So you might not be able to see this, but it looks so cool in real life. Let me just show you real quick. So from this side, it just looks like a normal painting, but then when you switch over this way, you can see all of that iridescence come to life. Normal painting, and then all of those little hidden strokes come into life. And that's pretty much all I can do with the brushes and the acrylics at this moment in time. I could go over the top of this with like a nice smooth buttery layer of oils, but I don't want to lose all of that iridescent paint. So I'm gonna try and do something different. In order to do that, we're gonna need to go downstairs. I'm using my airbrush in my garage rather than my studio because my studio isn't well ventilated enough. My old studio was, but my new studio is inside my house. Welcome to the inside of my house. I don't want paint fumes going everywhere, so I'm going to do this in the garage. You wait there, it's too dark in here, and honestly it's a little bit of a tip, and by a little bit I mean a lot. So wait there, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm done. Let's head back up to the studio. Back in the studio, and I've finished airbrushing this piece. I've done a little bit of a glow here in the background over the rocks. Now it's time to paint the mountains. I hate painting mountains. So I decided to head to YouTube to look for some inspiration. And I found it in the videos of Andrew Tischler, who is a fantastic, like absolutely incredible artist. And also one of the reasons why I started my YouTube channel. I think the key to painting the mountains for me was keeping the paint relatively thin and watered down. Rather than creating like loads of blocky colours, I tried layering lots of thin layers of paint over the top of each other for all that snow and rock, and I think it worked. I'm so chuffed with how these mountains have turned out. These are actually probably some of the best mountains I've ever painted. I'm feeling really inspired with this piece and I want to just carry on, but unfortunately that's it for today. So I'll come back fresh tomorrow and hopefully I can get back into the flow that I'm in today because I just don't want to put my paintbrush down. It's day 2 on the painting now and I'm going to try and get this bottom section of the background done. This is the part of the painting that I don't need as much detail in. It's the part of the painting that I don't really want the viewer to spend loads of time looking at. So I don't need to be super precise with the brushwork. It can be a little bit scruffy, so hopefully it won't take too long. Plus, I'm going to use the airbrush to cover it all with a mist anyway. I'm really liking how this piece is looking so far. It's all coming together. I've still not decided yet whether I'm going to do it all in acrylics or go over the top with a layer of oils. But before I need to make that decision anyway, I'm going to need to get some of the foreground painted. Not gonna lie, at this point it's mostly just dabbing with a brush. I am regretting my choices. It's just dab, dab, dab. I hate painting snow. Occasionally there's a little bit more pointless brushwork. Like, nobody's even going to be looking at this part of the painting, so why am I bothering putting this much detail there? We're like half a centimetre up from the bottom of the painting. No one is going to see it. Why am I using such a tiny brush? When instead, I could be using a sponge. Give it a little bit of squirt of water, and then pick up this thing, dip it in some paint, and then more dabbing. Great. And then again with the tiny brush. I don't know why I do this to myself. The background and the foreground are done and I am so happy with how it's looking so far. Now I've just got to get this big guy painted in. I'm going to start with a layer or two of acrylics and then decide if I want to do a layer of oils over the top once I've done that. I've been really enjoying working with oils recently and I am really keen to learn more about using them, but I'm not sure if they'll be right for this painting just yet. But before I decide what I'm going to do with that, we've got to get these acrylic layers down first. So a mysterious package has just arrived. I know what's in it, but we're in my kitchen. Welcome to my kitchen. You can probably hear the dishwasher going off in the corner, so sorry about the sound. But yeah, I got this package in the post today, and I can't wait to see what's inside. Amber's holding the camera for me at the minute. Say hi, Amber.
Hello.
I have been sent an everlasting wet palette from Redgrass Creative. show you all these bits and pieces. I've seen these before, and I know a few artists that use them, and I've never tried one of these out, so I'm really excited to give them a try. And yeah, I'll let you know how it goes later in the video. Someone in the comments asked me, how do you know how much paint to actually put out? And they always run out. And honestly, I hate running out of paint, especially when I've just mixed up a colour. I don't really want to have to then try and mix that exact colour again. And honestly, the answer to this question is, I put out way too much paint than I would normally use. So I've got loads and loads of paint. I probably waste a little bit too much paint, if I'm being honest, but I find it's so much better than having to remix over and over and over again. And having more paint on your palette than less, especially with acrylics, helps to stop it from drying out. I am finally done with the snow. We've now just got like 4 layers of polar bear to paint. So I'm starting off with a Payne's Grey wash over the entire drawing. This is just to map out some of the shadows and the highlights, just to help me inform the painting a little bit more, and it also gives a little bit more of a darker base for me to work over the top of. And now I get to try out this fresh new palette. Moving swiftly on from whatever that was, and the palette looks pretty cool, and it felt like it was going to keep the paints wet. Don't ask me if the Stay Wet palette works yet, because I don't know. I will let you know in about 4 weeks after I've given it time to see if it works. I'm using all those pre-mixed colours to block in a base layer on the polar bear. This is just simplifying each section of the polar bear into colour blocks. I'm not really thinking about details at all at this stage, just those areas of colour. And I'm not even trying to find every minute shift in the colours, I'm just thinking about those big, basic blocks. Keeping it real simple. I have a massive tendency to over-detail things, but trust me, take your time with these initial layers, don't go into the details too soon, and I much prefer the finished outcome. And that's the first layer of acrylics done. Now we've got to do another. This is where I completely disregard what I've just said and go crazy with the details. Even though it's not the final layer, I treat it like it is. I'm now mapping out the direction of the fur using my Studio Wildlife brushes. And you can pick yourself up a set of these brushes from the link right there. Obviously, you can't click this link, but you can click the one in the description. Click it and treat yourself to some majestic brushes. In all seriousness though, mint brushes, I've been using them in all of my paintings. And they're great for doing work like this, where I'm building up this fur texture with slightly lighter layers of paint. Because the paint is relatively watered down, it is quite transparent, so some of those base colours that I've already blocked in are still showing through. I'm still making sure to leave plenty of gaps between the strands of fur, or in this case the clumps of fur. This polar bear's cold, it's wet, so you're not going to see those tiny detailed strands. And I'm giving this impression of these clumped layered fur by using layers of paint. Makes sense when you think about it. It's the next layers where we really have to start thinking about the details. I am so happy with how this piece is turning out so far, and now that those 2 blocking layers are done, I need to decide whether I'm going to be finishing this off with acrylics or oils. But you're going to have to wait till the next video to find out.